Alright everybody, it's me Rhoku back with some more League content, and in this video I'm going to go through every single item in the game and rank them in your tier list according to how good they are to build on Darius. Now I do want to create a proper Darius guide for Season 13, but that video is taking me a bit longer to create than usual, so I'm creating this video as like an appetizer of sorts. Now I do know that there's a lot of confusion among you guys because of my previous videos. Like, I've been releasing daily videos, and in those videos I've been trying a bunch of different builds, so a lot of you guys are confused about what's good, what's not, and I hope this video clears all that up. So yeah, let's just get right into it. Shurelia's is basically a horrible item. Darius. The new Abyssal Mask, although it has some niche uses, it really just does not fit in with Darius. Darius doesn't have a way to just mass apply it. Darius can't stand near enemy champions too long because he's not that tanky, and he doesn't do magic damage, so it doesn't work for him. So I'll put this at, I'd say, rarely effective. Oh man, I am so bored of playing ranked and norms. I wish there was more that I could do on League of Legends. Ah yes, here we go. Z-League. Click. Z-League lets you play in casual tournaments all day for free? Am I reading this right? I am! If you've got a 0.2 KD, do not fear, because Z-League will put you in divisions with other players near your skill level. So if you're iron or bronze, no problem. And with cash prizes on the line, you're playing for more than just glory and victory. I've been trying it for a few days. It's pretty simple. You just quickly register for a tournament. Then when the time starts, play some Nords and rank to get some kills and wins. You'll immediately see how well you stack up against everybody else. There's really no downside. So, if you want to win prizes by simply playing the game like you usually play it, then sign up to Z-League using my link in the description and the comment section below. You get 500 bonus credits. Join now and thank me later. Anathema's Chains. I'd say Anathema's Chains is a great item in certain situations. Now, you're not going to build this all the time, but there are a lot of games where if you're up against a champion, that's like the main hyper carry of the enemy, and they crucially don't do 2 damage, you can go Anathemas and basically just live longer against them. So Anathemas can be a very useful item in a jiffy when you need it. We don't really need this. This item is not too useful because, you know, Darius gets his ult back when he kills people with it anyway, so you don't really need an item that reduces ultimate cooldown. Banishing spell is unusable. Black Cleaver. Now, Black Cleaver used to be somewhere between B to C tier before in Season 12, because basically speaking, Black Cleaver is good at killing tanks, right? And in Season 12, if you wanted to kill tanks, you could just go for a Divine Sunder or a goredrinker and just kill them anyway. And this is only if you lose against them. If you win against the tank, you can just go Triforce and one-shot them anyway. So, like, Black Cleaver didn't really have much of a role, because to build Black Cleaver, you have to go out of your way and create space in your already busy build for Cleaver. Like, what, you're gonna replace, like, Sterax with it or get Stance? So, it was just not good. It was not convenient. Its use case was basically replaced by the Mythics. But right now, with how popular tanks are, with how meaty tanks are, Black Cleaver is getting a bit of a resurgence. Also, the new tank items, the new tank mythics, are not good on their own, right? When you rush those items, they kind of suck. Like the new Frostfire, the new Heartsteel, kinda, the new Jack Show. These items are really bad laning items because they basically just give you a lot of stats and then the mechanic that they offer. But this mechanic rarely does anything to the lane, so your trades are not going to be too great. Your wave clear is not going to be great either because you basically can't farm, doesn't give you AD or anything. So you're stuck in a position where if you rush those items, you're not going to be like laning that efficiently. This is why the meta right now, in my opinion, is going for a legendary item first, and then the tank mythic, and then going for a normal build. And the legendary item that can replace a mythic the most is Black Cleaver. Okay? Like before, these mythics basically just replace Cleaver now, but right now, because we want to build tank mythics in some cases, Black Cleaver can just kind of replace the mythics because it does a decent job at basically replicating what the old mythics would do. Lots of great stats, absolutely melts through tanks, and if you win lane with it, you can get a pretty solid amount of damage with Black Cleaver. Now, should you build it every single game? Because that's the more like difficult question to answer. In my opinion, I think it is like at the top of B tier, if that makes sense. I'm ranking these based on the order I get the images. I don't want to rank them within the tier because that's a bit too complicated, but I think Black Cleaver is at the very top of the B tier. It's a great legendary item if you're going to go for a tank mythic. But if you want to go for a more traditional style old Darius build from season 12, then you're not going to be able to build Cleaver at all. This is not too useful. Bork is terrible, right? Darius can't just sit there and whack auto attacks against other people. So yeah, Bork, there's not much use for Bork. I do know that there was a meta. No, there wasn't a meta. It was just someone in season 10, like a Darius player told people, hey, we should build Bork, but it was just completely insane. Like, terrible item on Darius. Bloodthirster, also this. Kempung Chainsword. It's a great item in some certain situations, but it's not really an item you want to build a lot. Before, when it like was 2,600 gold, it was pretty overpowered. So if the enemy had anti-heal, you just build it and get a ton of stats for it. Now that they nerfed it a bit, it's towards like the bottom of B tier and just kind of at the top of C tier, if that makes sense. This one sucks. Can't use it on Darius, can't use it on Darius. Dead Man's Plate. Now, Dead Man's Plate is a very solid item on Darius because the utility this item gives is an item that Darius is. The stat that this item gives is a stat Darius needs a lot, which is move speed. And crucially, around the map move speed. I don't know how that makes sense, but out of combat move speed, I guess, but it's also works in combat. But basically speaking, it's move speed that lets you get around the map faster. This is one of Darius's largest weaknesses because with Darius, you move around the map so slowly that sometimes it can be tough for you to make it to certain fights, certain objectives, or just stop someone from side laning fast enough. Dead Man's Plate solves this issue, so if you're super fed in your game, then you're going to be probably building Dead Man's Plate at some point to help you get on the map and, you know, participate in the fights fast enough. Now, tankiness-wise, it is quite horrible, right? It doesn't offer any sort of good tank stats, but the move speed is sometimes just worth it on its own. Death's Dance. I'd say Death's Dance is a solid legendary item, right? This item can get a lot of work done in busier team fights, and there's not much to say, really. If you're in a game where you're getting a ton of kills and you're basically guaranteed to pick up kills in a team fight, then Death's Dance is great. However, in some games where maybe the enemy team is a little fed, or they do true damage crucially, or maybe you can't get kills guaranteed, then you shouldn't be building Death's Dance because 1, it's super expensive, 2, the build path kind of sucks, and 3, it doesn't make you tanky. It only makes you tanky if you get kills. If you can't get kills, no. This sucks. Can't build it. Divine Sunder. Towards the end of the season, Divine Sunder became less and less and less useful because of how strong Triforce was. Basically speaking, towards the end of the season, with how strong Triforce became on Darius, especially with Sterax, you would do so much damage, even against tanks, that you basically wouldn't need Divine Sunder. You could just go Triforce Sterax and full tank, and basically still do enough damage to just like do your Darius thing. So Divine Sunder kind of lost its purpose towards the end of the season because if you just one lane, you wouldn't need a tank killing item because you just would do so much damage with Triforce Sterax to just kill tanks. Troll item, troll item, troll item, troll item, blah, 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 blah. Our first season 13 item, Jacksho the Protein, I believe. Now, Jacksho the Protein, I'd put it in B tier because, like, the whole tank mythic build has not been proven too far in, like, most games, okay? This is just something we newly came up with, and I can't really confidently, recommend this to everyone because I haven't played it, like, I haven't played with the whole cleaver into tank mythic build a lot myself, okay? I've been busy pumping these videos out, so, like, I'm not too sure how effective it is. From the looks of things, from the feel of things, from how things play out, I feel like going for a build with Jacksho the Protean is going to be very great. Out of all the new tank mythics, this is clearly, by far the most effective one. It's just way too powerful because the amount of stats it gives are absolutely insane. A lot of HP, a ton of resistances, and that extra 15% is nothing to actually scoff at. It's actually quite a decent bit, especially later on into the game where you're getting like 20, 30, 40 resistances from that 15%, which makes the item give 30, 24 from the thing, 50. You're getting like 80, 90, 100 resistances from just this item. So Jacksho the Protein is a very, very powerful item in terms of just going for tank Darius. Like if you want to play a Darius that's very durable, go with this item. It's incredibly amazing. But until the build becomes more meta, I can't place it any higher in this tier list, okay? So just keep that in mind. Radiant Virtue, it kind of just sucks on Darius, if I'm being honest. Like, every single effect from the whole Transcendent thing is not great on Darius. First off, the HP regen just sucks. It's 2% of your max health every 3 seconds, right? So let's say you have 4,000 health by late game, right? 4,000, 2% of that is going to be 80. Now, a third of that is going to be roughly 20-something. 20-something per second. That is insanely pathetic for like a late game fight. So you're never going to get anything out of Radiant Virtue that you can't get out of any other items, right? The CDR gives, okay, but like the thing with Darius is that beyond 40 to 50 CDR, or ability haste rather, beyond 40 to 50 ability haste, you're not getting really that much more return for your money, okay? Ability haste kind of just gets less and less effective the more you buy it. And with Darius, your Q and W are spammable already, so you don't need that much more ability haste than like 40 or 50 to just, you know, be able to get your abilities out quickly. So Darius can't make much use of that. The only good thing about the effect is the whole 10% increased health, but you could just go for Jack Shit the Protein and have enough resistances to essentially have 10% more health through your resistances, if you get what I mean. So this item, not effective, not for Darius, it just sucks. Heartsteel. Heartsteel lies in between the two. Like, it is a decent item, okay, in that you can get some use out of it. But the main issue you run into with this item is that, one, you have to build it against melees. If you build it against a very ranged team, you're going to get virtually no use out of it. And two, keep in mind, when we talked about Cleaver, you can't build tank mythics first. They don't give you any way to lane with. So your laning is going to suck. You can't CS, you can't clear waves. All you can do is interact with the enemy champion. So if they crash a massive slow push into your turret, you're going to take so long to clear that, they could just roam, get 3-4 kills, and come back. So in any competitive game where players have brains, I cannot recommend you go Heartsteel first item, or any of the other tank mythics first item. But Heartsteel is an item that kind of scales the earlier you buy it, you know? Especially in lane where you get to constantly trade with your opponent, that's when Heartsteel will be the best. So you kind of get the situation where if you get Heartsteel first, your laning is gonna suck. But you can't get it later, like a second or a third item, because you won't get as many stacks out of it. So Heartsteel is just not too effective on Darius, period. Okay? And it's not nearly as effective as Jack Shit, because Jack Shit gives you resistances. And the later on in the game you go, like, the worse health becomes. Health spikes the second you buy it, and then late game when players' damage is like increased, then it just kind of starts falling off. Whereas resistances kind of is more and more useful. But I mean, obviously with how much damage there is, neither will stop you from getting killed, but still, right? Resistances scales better than health, and Jaksho is just way better than Heartsteel. The new Frostfire Gauntlet. There's a lot of hype behind this item, including myself. Like, I was kind of super hyped for this item because of how great it sounded on paper. But after playing with it, it is unfortunately not as good as Jaksho the Protein. Now, I do get it, right? If you get it and you fight the enemy 1v1, you're going to do a lot in trades, okay? That slow is going to stop the enemy from kiting you. That slow is going to stop them from positioning for vitals or whatever. That slow is going to stop them from getting away under their turret so you can get more damage off. I've had situations where, like, I'm fighting a Riven, and I have Frostfire. And you know that thing the Riven does where she goes melee range, W, E, Q, 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 away. I basically just proc my W, hit her with it. She does that whole thing, but because the slow is so massive, I could just walk up to her without Ghost and just catch her anyway. So, like, there are a lot of cases where this item, a lot of matchups where this item is amazing. However, it does suffer from the same thing that all these other tank items suffer from. You can't build it alone, okay? It just sucks alone. No wave clear, no damage against minions, no damage in general, just the sheen. It's like, it's virtually only good in trades. Because even in all-ins, if you actually look at, like, you know, the numbers of it after a busy, massive all-in, you're basically blocking up to like 100, 150 damage if you use it properly. Now, that's not that effective because it's essentially just having a ruby crystal. So, like, It's just not too effective. Like the damage cut is not as effective as it sounded on paper, right? The more important thing is the slow, right? Because Darius can just get a point and click unstoppable W attack to just slow the enemy 100% of the time. And like because it's so ineffective as a first item, we have to delay to our second item. But that's where the problem lies, because this item is only good for laning. Okay? In a teamfight scenario, yeah, sure, you can get a lot of slows off with the frozen area, but the item is crucially a single target damage item. It exhausts or cripples a single target. It has no like area of effects. It doesn't make you very tanky, right? Like a Jackshot the protein makes you super tanky. It's not that effective in terms of the stats it gives you, right? The stats are kind of pale in comparison to the other tank items. So it's a laning item that you can't buy first item in the game because of how poor your laning will be. Like, you gotta understand the problem with this. So unless they make it so that the entire frozen area does AoE to the whole wave, because if you guys remember with old Iceborne Gauntlet, the ice area dealt the sheen damage to every single unit that was inside it. This one doesn't. So unless they make a change like that, the Frostfire Gauntlet is going to stay in C tier. It's at the very top of C tier, but it's going to be stuck there because you can't build this item first because of how poor the wave clear it gives you is, right? You legit can't contest waves because of how terrible the wave clear is. And CSing is going to be a nightmare too. So yeah, this item needs a bit of changing, and I hope that Riot does change it, because it's an item with a lot of promise. Okay, Spear of Shojin. Spear of Shojin is not too great on Darius. I have a lot of videos where I've tested this item, and even off YouTube, off stream, whatever, I've extensively tested this item, and I have to say, this item is very rarely effective. Okay? First off, the number one problem this item has is its price tag. Now, I know that like 100, 200 gold might not seem like a lot in isolation, but it can be very, very impactful, because that 100, 200 gold is an additional few minutes, an additional recall where you don't have that item. And the item costs 3,400 gold, which is, I think, the most expensive bruiser item. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, at its current state, Spear of Shojin can only be built if you're super fed. Okay? Like if you're getting a ton of kills. But if you're super fed, why would you? Let's just list the stats, okay? Because stat-wise, it gives good 80, 65 80, 300 health, and good ability haste, okay? These are the stats it gives. Let's go for the passives. The ability haste passive, and then the move speed passive. These are all this item does. Let's go through them one by one. The stats are great, okay? Now, it is a bit heavier on the AD side, but as like an entire unit, these stats are great. But it's not really enough. It's not enough meat. You need some sort of good passive mechanic to make this item worth it. But the passive mechanics are just not that useful on Darius. I know, but we're going to go through them one by one. First off, the ability haste one. The ability haste one, as I mentioned before when talking about stacking ability haste, is not that useful because, one, it's only on your basic abilities, and it doesn't work on the one item you need it on, which is your hook, right? You only get half the ability haste on your hook, but that's the one item you'd want it the most on. So from that perspective, it sucks. And from another perspective, Darius doesn't need that much ability haste, because at some point you're getting such a diminishing returns. It's like, okay, I'm going to build 40 ability haste. How much does it shave off of the cooldown? Like 0.2 seconds. It's like, at some point, it's just not effective. Okay? So by the time you've built Shojin, you preferably have a mythic already, and you could just build literally like any other bruiser item or even some tank items and still have that 40 to 50 CDR, or ability haste rather, that you need for Darius. Okay? So the additional 20 that you get from the Shojin, like you build Shojin and you basically get like, you go from 20 to like 50, 60, 70 ability haste, or I guess 80, since it gives 40 when you're not oximated, but yeah, right? So it gives a ton of ability haste, but Darius doesn't need it that much. Let's talk about the other passive, because this is the one that a lot of players thought, okay, this could be super huge in Darius. The bad part is that it's only useful when you're low health, okay? So you're not going to make use of this the entire game. that passive is not going to be useful the entire time you buy it. It's only going to be useful in fights where you're low health. Now, this might sound like a situation that's very common, but you have to basically like think about how these fights play out. So, like, how many situations are going to be low health in, right? So, let's say you get caught. When you get caught, when you get CC'd, when you get bursted down, Spirit Shojin isn't going to do anything. It's going to do nothing to make you more tanky. So in these situations, you'd arguably be doing way better with a Stare Axe or a Death Stance even. So if you get caught and you get bursted down and then killed, Spirit Shojin is useless in this situation. Okay, that's one. What situation exactly, I'm not going to go through this one, what situation exactly is Spirit Shojin useful in? It's useful in drawn out fights where the enemy team is a little disorganized, and you go in, you take some damage, and then you keep fighting without them killing you. Okay? Now, in these situations, we most of the time just have our ghost anyway. So don't really get that much use out of Spirit Shojin because Darius is not Hecarim, okay? It's not more move speed the better. It's enough move speed, and that's it, okay? We need like 500-ish move speed, and then we're good to go, right? But like that extra bit we get from Shojin is just not that much more useful on top of Ghost. So we need a fight where we go in, we get bursted down, but we don't get killed, and then we don't have our summoner supposed to fight the rest of the fight out. This is such a rare situation. You might be thinking, oh, it makes you more independent because you don't need Ghost anymore, but that kind of situation happens so rarely. And to survive the burst without your summoner spells, you kind of have to be fed. And if you're fed, why not just go for the plethora of other items that will make you even more powerful? Like, you're super fed, you kill people, like in teamfights guaranteed. Why would you go Shojin where you can just go Death Stance and just wipe the entire fight out? Okay? You got Triforce, you're super fed, you're taking out turrets. Why would you go Shojin where you can just go Stare Axe, do a ton of damage, one-shot everyone, and also be really tough to put down? You get what I'm saying? It's like, what Shojin does is more rarely useful than it seems. And the situations that it would be good in are the same exact situations where if you're in position to buy it, you'd be far better off with another item. So I can't put Shojin any higher than C tier. Winter's Wrath or Fimbulwinter. This item kind of just sucks on Darius. I know there was like a whole hype around it when it was released. Like I kind of was excited for it, but it just was not that useful, honestly. The thing is, right, you have to just be hitting people and slowing them to get the shield from this item, but you don't do that much, right? It's like if it activated when people hit you, then it'll be way more useful, but it doesn't. So yeah, it's not nearly as efficient as Stare Axe Shield. Force of Nature, a very, very, very amazing item. I think I'll put this S tier because of how effective it is, right? Force of Nature is your premier magic resist item. Okay, it's the best one. If you're up against a magic resist wall, you want this item in your inventory, okay? If you're super fed, then in that case, you might not need it as much. But if it's like a close game, or even if you are fed and the enemy has like a caster or like an Azir or something, then you have to get Force of Nature. Frozen Heart. Frozen Heart is a great item in certain situations because of Randuin's, right? Because Riot buffed Randuin's to be its like current form, Frozen Heart has kind of fallen out of favor because in the Season 12, you could build this item a lot more because, you know, let's say that you can't really get on top of the enemies and you want to reduce their like DPS, then you have Frozen Heart. But because Randuin's just blocks crit that's being dealt to you, Frozen Heart just got a bit more useless, right? Not to say that it's unusable. If you're up against auto attackers that don't use crit, crucially, right? Because a lot of the auto attackers that you'd want this item against just use crit, like Tryndamere crit, right? Yon Yasuo crit, Vayne crit, all the ADCs crit, right? So all the champions that the attack be slow would be useful against, build crit anyway. So you could just build randos against them, right? So Frozen Heart is bad not because it's a worse item, but because there's a better item to basically replace it. Gale Force, I mean, I guess the dash would be quite troll and fun, but not really. Gargoyle Stoneplate. This is a great item, but it's really, really expensive, okay? And the price of it kind of just puts it down. And also, with a lot of players, especially low elo players, the items with actives are quite tough to use. So it's like, I see my students sometimes build gargoyles and they just never actually use it. Or they use it in like the worst situations where like they have the Sterex shield activated and then they use like gargoyles on top of it. So both of them are decayed at the same time, but none of them are actually tanking health. So you want to use gargoyles and you want to time it with the burst of the enemy, okay? So you want to time this correctly. And to do that, you need a lot of skill and a lot of errors. So most low elo players won't get too much use out of this item, but it is a great item nonetheless. And if you have the gold for it, it's a solid pickup. Goredrinker. I'd say Goredrinker is a solid item if you're up against a full melee team. You can get a lot of healing off of it with the active of it, but it just kind of pales in comparison to the other mythics. Guardian Angel. The stats of Guardian Angel are absolutely horrible, but that extra life can be useful in like that 1 in 50 games. If you are your team's only carry and you're necessary to win the game, then you buy GA. But keep in mind that the stats are horrible. So there's an item you can get instead of it that gives you that one stat. Let's say they have a crit carry. If it's this, GA or randos, then just go for randos, because randos will actually make you tankier against them and be able to like win the fight more. So GA, horrible stats, but there are cases where that revive is going to be super useful. Ginsu's clown item, terrible. Maybe I need to like rearrange some of these troll items because let's see here. I guess Bork is D tier. I guess. I mean D tier, not B tier. D tier, yeah. I guess it's D tier because you can't technically use it in a 1v1, but it is still horrible. Okay, boom, boom. Hullbreaker. Hullbreaker is not that useful anymore because the game is more and more about team fighting, and Darius also just kind of sucks at split pushing. So, like, you can't force Darius to be a solid split pusher because of his lack of mobility, right? All the good modern split pushers have great mobility, which Darius does not have. So, unfortunately, Hullbreaker doesn't have much use because it gives you none of those great juicy resistances when you're inside of fights. Shield bow, I guess it's fine. I've seen some players build shield bow, and the shield is kind of like a Sterex replacement, but then you're missing out on all the good stuff you get from the other mythics, so yeah, no. I use troll. This is, what is this? I forget the name of this item, but you can build it. Something helm. I don't know, but it's pretty good if you're feeding and there's a carrier on team. Just buy this and be like a tank support. But aside from that, you're not going to get too much. Like, it's a match where you're feeding already, and you're basically just going to buy it to pretend like you deserve your LP. Okay. I guess Locket is like the same case with this item where like you're feeding so bad that you might as well just go for like a supportive tank. But the thing is, this is a mythic, so if you're feeding by the time you build your mythic, it doesn't really matter. You've messed up. The game's just lost. This sucks. Maw of Malmortius. Maw used to be really good when they fresh reworked it, but I think over time it's just less and less and less effective because of how good our magic resist options are. Force of Nature single-handedly killed this item because of how effective it is, right? Force of Nature is an amazing magic resist item. Now, you can build Maw against full AP teams. You can substitute it, like Sterex with it, but I wouldn't say like you should be building this most of the time. This sucks. This sucks. Bye. I guess it's like a worse version of Kempunk Chainsword. Some of the stats are nice, but it's ultimately way too squishy for Darius. Bam. If you're playing Darius support, this is the one that you'd want. Fan Dancer is useful in some scenarios. Like, if you're going for some sort of messed up 1v1 build, and you have an item with a lot of meat that needs a lot of attack speed, then I guess you could work with Phantom Dancer, but I heavily recommend against it because although it makes killing turrets fast, although it makes like laning really nice and smooth, and it makes some 1v1s great, let's just keep in mind that in most 1v1 fights with Darius, after 2-3 items, the fight's basically over by the time you hit Noxium Might. But this item is like, it gives you that attack speed boost, like, continuously. So this item is more so for champions that have to keep getting auto attacks in throughout the entirety of the fight, but Darius doesn't really want that. Darius gets auto attacks in the beginning of the fight, and then just ends it with his ultimate and Q, stuff like that. This item sucks, this item sucks. Randuins, oof. I love Randuin so much. I think Randuin is a solid S tier tank item. Is it? Build in most games, yeah. It's a solid tank item. It is the best armor item available. I'll put it S tier because it's just really amazing. Okay? You will rarely have a match where the enemy has no crit. Okay? So Randuins is like, it's really useful for just how tanky it makes it against crit. Okay? Especially when they have like the Yons and Yasuos. You buy this item, you're so much tankier. So Randuins is an amazing tank item. Rapid Fire sucks. Ravenous Hydra. The current version of Ravenous Hydra is actually like not that bad on Darius, because the thing is, right, if you're going for a troll build on Darius, right? I accidentally pressed the back button on my mouse. What does that even show us? Whatever. Okay, so the thing with Ravenous Hydra is that when you're really fed as Darius, really fed, you can just build any item you want, right? But the thing with Ravenous Hydra is that it's so overpowered right now that if you're really fed and you build this item, you're gonna get so many stats that they'll just one-shot everyone. So if you're playing a game with your friends, let's say a casual game, or you're smurfing, or you're playing a match at your rank, but the enemy just completely just ints you, then you can actually just go Ravenous Hydra, and that'll give you enough damage for a while, right? You can literally just go attack mythic after Ravenous Hydra and still have enough damage to just one-shot people out of existence. So Ravenous Hydra is great, especially when you pair it up with like a tank item, okay? But keep in mind, this isn't your normal fed, as in, I got 3 kills in lane. This is your, I can go between the enemy's auto turret, their tier 2 turret, and constantly kill them, and whoever else comes in to fight me, I can kill them too. That fed, okay? Like, you have 5, 6, 7 kills by like 15 minutes, or 10 minutes rather. It's like, and no deaths crucially. That fed. And if you're up against a team with a lot of peel and a lot of CC, then it's not going to be that useful, okay? But if you're up against a team without a lot of team play, without a lot of peel, without a lot of range, and you're kind of fed, even if they do have a lot of range, because if you're that fed, you snowball so hard that you basically get to a one-shot everyone position before the enemy team has time to even scale up their damage. So if you're super fed, you can get a lot of funny moments from Ravenous Hydra. It's terrible. Useful in some situations, right? I know Serpent's Fang doesn't seem like Darius's thing, but in some cases, nobody else is going to build it, right? Maybe your team has just crit champions, and if they have crit champions, then they might as well just go for their damage, and then you're just the one left building this item. But the bad thing is, you can't get it onto everybody else, right? You're not that good at spreading it. But a life hack you can do with Serpent's Fang is you buy Serpent's Fang, and then you go for Bramble Vest or Thornmail. And every single person that auto-attacks you will get that Serpent's Fang effect applied onto them. This is a life hack discovered by moi. But yeah, I actually did this in a few games, and so I actually did this in a few games, and it's so funny because Karma boosts up their ADC, and the ADC auto-attacks you and just puts that effect on themselves, right? So the shielding is just way less effective. So if you're not the hyper carry, or if it's an even game but those shields are really messing you guys up, then you can build this item. And if it's difficult for you to get those like the separate Fang effect on top of the enemies, then you can build like a Bramble Vest and just get on top of everyone, right? It's costly, but it is like a trick you can pull out of your back pocket if you need it, okay? So this sucks. Silvermere Dawn is useful in some situations. You certainly want it. It's just like a QSS basically. So if you're up against a game that needs a QSS, like a Mouse or something, Mordekaiser, that's quite useful. Spirit Visage. Spirit Visage used to be quite a beefy tank item. It used to be Darius' favorite magic resist, but because of how good Force of Nature is, in any situation, unless the one where you're insanely fed, you basically want to go for Force of Nature over Spirit Visage, right? Spirit Visage doesn't give as much magic resist, doesn't give that awesome move speed buff, plus the magic damage blocking, so, like, it's just not as effective. Now, if you're in a game where you're crushing everybody, you can pair Spirit Visage up with your Starax and your Death Stance to get more out of each of those things. More shield and more healing. So, if you're fed and you get a ton of kills, you can get a ton of healing off of Spirit Visage. You can get like 2,000 healing and shielding each. But it's like, that's like one case. In any other case, especially against like magic DPS, you're gonna want to go for Force of Nature. This is terrible. I don't think I have to explain anything else about this. Starax is the GOAT of League Legendaries. It is absolutely perfect. Gives you damage, gives you tankiness. The damage scales with you as you go along in the game. And the recent buffs to it have put it over the edge in terms of like by far the best legendary. And even before the buffs, this is something that quite annoyed me with a lot of people, but somehow there's this myth that Starax was like a terrible item on Darius. Somehow. Which I don't know who came up with that, but like it never was a bad item on Darius. It was always a perfectly buildable item. And now, with the synergy with Triforce, it's even more perfect. So, you don't want to be sleeping on Starax. Terrible. Stridebreaker is useful in a lot of situations, right? It's more useful than goredrinker. But the main issue it runs into is that it's not Triforce, right? Triforce just gives so much more damage, and it's such a good combo with Starax that you want to build Triforce most of the time. But the thing with Stridebreaker is that sometimes you really need that slow. So if you're going for a Mooseby-centric build, if you're planning on going for a Dead Man's Plate second item and just running around the map and use the Mooseby to your advantage, if you're trying to fight a champion and you haven't beaten them, right, then you might need the Stridebreaker slow to just slow them down so they can't just destroy you in seconds, right? If you're not that fed, then maybe you can go for Stridebreaker to help out a bit more, like you're not in position to carry with Triforce. But yeah, the issue with Stridebreaker is that Triforce, I've said, it's so powerful that even in games where you're not fed, you're better off just going for Triforce and Starax and, you know, hoping you get a bunch of kills and TVs and then getting fed off of that. So, yeah, Triforce's existence makes this bad boy a bit worse than it should be. The new Sunfire, I guess it's okay, but nah, it's terrible. Like, aside from troll builds where it's like, Darius melts everyone near him. Oh my god, whoa. Unless you're going for like watching those kind of stupid troll build videos, you're not going to see Sunfire and Darius at all. Collector is a fun troll item. You just one-shot people. Thornmail is great. It just sucks because you can only proc the greatest woods using your hook. But aside from that, stats are great. The anti-heal is great. It's just, I'd put it down here actually, because it's like the same tier as like Chempunk Chainsword. It pales in comparison to the other tank items that are armor, and it doesn't work with Darius that well. So as anti-heal, Chempunk Chainsword is better, but we kind of want the tank stance of Thornmail more in some cases. Tethering Hydra sucks. Triforce, our GOAT. Please take your seat in S tier. Nothing much to say really. Turbo Kim Tank. The new Turbo Kim Tank is really situational because it kind of suffers from the same thing that Spirit Visage does. Force of Nature is the GOAT of magic resist items. This item is the GOAT. So you rarely run into a situation where you wouldn't want this and you'd want this instead. And also, another item kind of replaces Turbo Kim Tank, which is Dead Man's Plate. So in a lot of cases, you just want Dead Man's Plate over Turbo Kim Tank because Dead Man's Plate gives you the move speed as you're running into fights anyway, right? So Turbo Kim Tank is only good when you're like surprise running on someone from a good position and you want to just catch them before they get to safety, okay? And the stats on it are great, but because of the use case of the item being invalidated by Dead Man's Plate and then Force of Nature in a lot of cases, it really, like, the usability of them just goes down because, like, why don't you just buy the other items, right? So the case you want this item in is that you want to basically catch people, right? They're very ranged. Like, you're up against a ranged team. They do a lot of magic damage, and you want to be able to just engage on them and kill them before they can react. then you want Turbo Chem Tank, because you can't go DMP, gives armor, right? So yeah, terrible, 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 not great. Usable but terrible, pretty fun, terrible. Yeah, terrible. Okay, so let me see if I can rearrange the tiers a bit. Does this look fine? I think this looks fine. Yeah. Fair enough. Everything seems fine. Okay. If you have any thoughts on any of these items or questions, ask me in the comment section below. I'll try to answer all of them. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Peace out.